All right, hello YouTube. Today I will finally be reviewing Venom. Let There Be Carnage. Um, this is, of course, the second Venom movie in the trilogy. Um, I remember, I of course, I mean that this movie, of course, isn't that old, but um, I remember. I remember that. I remember hearing when Carnage, was going to be the main villain for Venom 2, and I was obviously very, 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 very excited. Carnage, coming into it was obviously teased, at the end of the first movie. Um, they had Woody Harrelson show up as Cletus Kassidy in a post-credit scene, basically teasing, that he was going to be the villain for the next one. Um, and my biggest concern, or my biggest concern for the movie, for the sequel was obviously, how is Carnage going to look? um, which I imagine was pretty much, everybody's concern at the time was, how is Carnage going to look? When are they going to, when are they going to show, when are they going to show us, a picture of Carnage? Um, and then of course, the trailer dropped, and I was like, oh my God, they could not, Sony could not have done, Sony could not have done a better job. They completely friggin' nailed him. Um, okay, so let me get into the review before I get ahead of myself. Um, so this movie pretty much picks up where the first movie left off, and that is um, Venom is, or Eddie Brock is. Um, he's been living with Venom now for uh, a little while, um, and he is searching for his next story. Um, and he is searching, for his next story. And Michelle Williams is back as Annie in this, um, in this movie, and he is struggling. Eddie Brock is struggling with the fact, that she, that she has basically moved on with her life without Eddie. He is obviously, very much still in love with her, because if you remember, in the first movie, um, if you remember, they were going to get married. They were going to, um, they were going to get married, but because of, his actions in the first movie, um, because of his actions in the first movie, it cost him, um, or it cost them, their relationship. Um, so Annie is getting engaged to Dan, who I actually didn't bring up in my review of the first movie, but um, he is a doctor. He is back also for this movie. Um, he is the doctor that actually helped Eddie a great deal in the first movie. Um, but yeah, so Eddie Brock is searching for his next story, and he basically scores the interview of a lifetime with serial killer and death row inmate Cletus Kassidy. Um, and the movie opens uh, with Cletus Kassidy in um, Cletus Kassidy in hang on, let me look at my notes. Um, Um, okay, yeah. Um, Movie opens in St. Estes Reform School, California in 1996. Um, and he, and you know, and we do learn, we do in this movie, we do learn, Cletus's backstory and how he, like how he was an orphan, how he basically was just always a psycho. He was never, um, he wasn't, he was just, he was always a psycho, like even as a kid, he was always just a bad, um, he was always just, like a bad guy, just completely, you know, ju- uh, just, completely evil inside and out. Um, and he gets and he um and apparently as a kid he fell in love with a woman named Shriek, who is also in this movie. um and they were separated as kids. He ended up being taken away from her, and they got separated as kids, and then um and they got separated as kids, and then the movie opens um to the modern day in Ravencroft, or in Ravencroft prison, where Shriek is being held, and she learns that Cletus Kassidy is basically awaiting execution, and that's when Eddie Brock scores, um, and and Eddie Brock scores, the story of a lifetime, and ends up scoring an interview again with serial killer and death row inmate Cletus Kassidy. He's basically like, so he meets with him, and he basically says, "Hey, um, if you give a message to my fans, I will give you." He's basically he says, if you give a message to my fans for me, I will give you, my life story. I will give you, the story of a lifetime, basically. Um, and um, and Eddie Bra and Cletus Cassidy in this movie is obsessed with Eddie Brock, and he is, basically obsessed with trying to prove to him, that they're one and the same, and blah blah blah. And again, just a complete, just a complete psycho all around. Um, and um, Venom and Eddie's relationship in this movie is still very very rocky. Um, because Venom obviously can't leave Eddie's body without his permission. So and Venom and Eddie is not only struggling with struggling with the fact that that Annie has officially moved on, also um but also but also Venom is just constantly like up his ass 24/7 about, oh, let's go out and let's go out and eat people, let's go out and eat bad guys, and protect the innocent, um and and just constantly just crawling up Eddie's ass, and um constantly crawling up Eddie's ass, and just constantly nagging him, and just um and Eddie feels, Eddie is very very frustrated, because he obviously just wants, he wants to live in peace. He wants to um basically just, live his life without somebody, in his head 24/7, basically. Um, so he ends up scoring, as I said before, the interview of a lifetime with Cletus Kassidy, um, Detective Mulligan, who is in charge of, the investigation of basically finding out where Cassidy's victims are. He does not like Eddie Brock. He doesn't trust Eddie Brock. He knows that uh, that something, he knows that something is very, very off with Eddie. He knows that um, he knows that whenever, he knows that, wherever Eddie usually is, trouble is usually, not that far behind. Um, he knows that, um, he knows that, that the circumstances that, um, that where, Eddie usually is are very, very suspicious. Things just don't, completely add up. Um, and um, so he is dealing with, so Eddie is dealing with a lot in this movie, a lot more so than in the first movie. Um, so he gets, so an encounter with um, Eddie Brock, an encounter between Eddie Brock and Cletus Kassidy is what, and is how he, um, is how Carnage gets, or is how Cletus gets, is how Cletus becomes Carnage. He gets into a fight with Eddie. Cletus bites him, and then he Cletus bites him, and then of course, he gets, um, he gets a sample of the Venom symbiote, and then when it is finally time for Cletus's execution, uh, by death by lethal injection. That is what activates. That is how Cletus, ends up turning into Carnage, um, and just basically goes on a like massive like murder spree throughout the city. Um, Venom and Venom and Eddie Brock end up having a falling out. Venom ends up leaving Eddie's body, and that is, and the basic, or the overall, I guess you could say, like premise of the movie is basically Eddie and Venom basically need to reconcile their differences if they hope to stop, or if they hope to save the world from Carnage and Shriek. Um, this movie, I remember hearing when it came out. This one, even though the first movie obviously did not do well critically, um, commercially, it was obviously, it was a massive, 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 massive hit. It made tons and tons and tons of money. Um, it made, tons and tons and tons of money. It was a massive hit at the box office. Um, it was a massive, massive hit at the box office, and obviously ended up greenlighting, two more movies, which this one, from what I understand, this one did not make as much as the first one did. Um, but this one was actually seen as an improvement to the first movie. This movie did better critically. Um, this movie did better critically. Um, and Andy Serkis actually directed the sequel. Uh, Original director Ruben Fletcher, I think, ended up leaving, or wasn't able to come back to do this one because he was doing another movie at the time. So they had to bring in somebody else to direct the movie, and they ended up getting Andy Serkis. Um, and and much like the first movie, this movie is absolutely hilarious. Um, Venom and Eddie's relationship in this movie is very, very much on par with how it was in the first movie. Their chemistry, um, their chemistry and their chemistry, uh, as well as like that bromance, relationship that they have. Um, Especially when they have their falling out, it's absolutely hilarious. I remember watching this for the first time in the theater and just genuinely like laughing my ass off uh at a lot of the humor in this movie. um at a lot of the humor in this movie. At some I will say though, in certain scenes in this movie felt a little bit more. Um, this movie at times it felt a little bit more like it was more about Carnage than about Venom. Um, I mean, Carnage. And like I said, that was easily my biggest concern. When they announced, that Carnage was going to be the main villain, it was, like, what is he going to look like? Are they going to, uh, like, what is he going to look like? Are they going to, like, how much, of the character from, the comics are they going to change, if anything? Um, but yeah, no, they completely friggin' nailed it. I mean, um, they completely friggin' nailed his design. The only thing that bugs me about Woody Harrelson's portrayal as Carnage in this movie um, is Carnage in the comic books. Um, Carnage has a very like evil, sarcastic, um, twisted sense of humor. Um, and sadly, they did not, for whatever reason, they did not include that. They did not include that part of his personality in the movie. In the movie, he's relatively serious all the time. He's not cracking, like the evil, sarcastic, jokes that he is in the comic books. Um, that is the only downside about his performance in this movie. But I mean, other than that, Woody Harrelson completely embraces um, Cletus Cassidy's narcissistic and just completely psychotic personality. Um, and yeah, no, Carnage. And in Carnage, is obviously a fan favorite among Spider-Man fans, among Venom fans. Um, and yeah, no, I mean, they completely freaking nailed. They completely freaking nailed his design. Um, in terms of the movie is, of course, the movie is PG-13, but the movie does, very much push, um, it does, very much, push, the PG-13 rating to its limits. Um, me personally, I mean, I of course, would have loved to have seen an R-rated Venom and Carnage fight, but that's obviously not, what Sony was going for. Sony obviously wanted to appeal, to a wider audience. Um, to a wider audience, which, is understandable, but at the same time, it's like, but at the same time, but at the same time, it's like, come on, this is Venom. I mean, lethal protector. It's like, come on. Um, but, but yeah, no, the movie is just, the movie's great. It's funny. It's funny. It's action packed. There are a lot of Easter eggs in here, referencing, the comics and, a lot of things, a lot of things that, that fans that fans, will love and recognize and, and stuff like that. Um, and, yeah, no, this one is so good. And Tom Hardy actually helped write, the story for the movie. Um, and yeah, no, this movie's just so good. And, this movie is just, it's just a fun, um, it's just one of those fun, it's just, like one of those fun, comic book movies. One of my favorite, moments in this movie, minor spoilers, and this was actually in the trailer, so it's not, if you've seen the trailer, it's not really a spoiler, but one of my favorite movies um, is when Venom finally confronts Carnage, and Venom is like, is like scared shitless. He's like, oh shit, and and Venom just and Venom turns back into Eddie Brock, and and Eddie's literally like trying to convince him to you know Eddie Brock is literally like trying to convince Venom to come out, Venom to come out, despite the fact, that he's scared shitless. He goes, that is a red one. And just, and, and Eddie Brock goes, I will let you eat everybody. And just, moments like that, that just really, really capture, um, Eddie and Venom's, bromance and their, and their, relationship. Moments like that are so funny, um, and just, and just really, really, um, and, just really, really speak to, the character. But yeah, no, this movie, um, but yeah, no, this movie is just so good. This movie, um, especially if you're, especially if you're a Venom fan, if you're a Carnage fan, which, obviously I'm a fan of both. Um, but yeah, no, if you haven't seen this, you're missing out. So, if you haven't seen it, watch it because it's a blast. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you've seen it and what you thought of it. Like, subscribe, and I will talk to you guys later. Peace.